The day everything changed, I never believed in signs, fate, or the idea that one moment could split your life into a before and after. My days were predictable, quiet, an ordinary wake up, drag myself through a job I didn't care about, come home, scroll endlessly on my phone, and fall asleep to the hum of the ceiling fan. Nothing exciting ever happened to me, and honestly I was fine with that. But on that day, the day everything changed, something shifted. It began as a normal morning. The sun peeked through the thin curtains of my bedroom, dust floating in golden rays like tiny suspended stars. I remember stretching lazily, groaning as my body resisted the idea of leaving the warmth of the bed. The clock on my nightstand glowed 7:03 a.m., same as always. I showered, dressed, and grabbed my backpack, preparing to catch the 7:30 bus. On my way out, I noticed something strange. The front door was unlocked. I was absolutely sure that I had locked it the night before. Living alone taught me to be careful. I froze for a second, staring at the handle, wondering if my memory was failing me. Maybe I was tired last night, I whispered to myself, trying to brush off the unease. Still, the thought followed me as I walked down the street. The bus was late as usual, and when it finally arrived, I sank into my usual seat by the window. That's when I saw it. Or rather him. Across the street on the opposite sidewalk stood a man. He wasn't moving, just standing completely still, as if frozen in time. He wore a long black coat, even though the weather was warm, and a hat that shadowed most of his face. At first, I thought maybe he was just waiting for someone, but then I realized he was staring at me. Our eyes locked, and even from that distance, I felt the weight of his gaze pressing against me. My stomach tightened, and I quickly looked away, pretending to scroll on my phone. But curiosity gnawed at me, and I glanced back. He was still there, still watching. When the bus pulled away, I exhaled in relief. Weird, I muttered under my breath, shaking off the feeling. I told myself it was nothing, just some stranger, probably waiting for his ride. People watch other people all the time. There's no reason to overthink it. But that wasn't the end. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Every reflection in the office windows, every movement in the corner of my eye, made me think of him. By lunchtime, I had convinced myself it was paranoia. "You're being ridiculous," I whispered, as I unwrapped my sandwich. And then I saw him again, across the street from the cafe where I usually ate, standing in the same posture, coat and hat unmoving, face hidden, eyes locked on me. I froze mid-bite, my sandwich hovering near my mouth. This wasn't coincidence. He had followed me. A cold wave ran through me, but I forced myself to act normal, chewing slowly, pretending I hadn't noticed. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me scared, and I finally worked up the courage to glance again. He was gone. Just gone, as if he had never been there at all. That night, back home, I triple-checked the locks, shutting every window and closing the curtains tight. The quiet of my apartment pressed on me like a heavy blanket. I left the lights on, too afraid to let the shadows grow. As I lay in bed, I tried to convince myself it had all been a misunderstanding, a trick of the mind. Maybe it wasn't even the same man. Maybe I was just stressed, exhausted, imagining things. But at exactly 3:03 a.m., I woke to a sound that made my blood run cold. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on my front door. I held my breath. My heart pounded so hard it echoed in my ears. Whoever it was didn't knock again. They didn't call out. They just waited. And in that silence, I knew my life was no longer the same. That was the day everything changed. A strange presence in the shadows. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. Instead, I lay there in bed, frozen, straining my ears for the slightest sound. My apartment was so quiet I could hear the faint buzzing of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. For minutes, I stayed like that, clutching the blanket as if it could protect me. Eventually, when no second knock came, I convinced myself that maybe it had been a dream, a half-awake hallucination, but deep down, I knew it hadn't been. The next morning, I left for work earlier than usual, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. The street outside my building looked ordinary. Just people rushing to their destinations, cars honking, shopkeepers sweeping their storefronts. Nothing out of place. No sign of the man in the black coat. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. On the bus, I caught myself scanning every corner, every alley we passed. When I got to work, I checked the glass reflections in the windows, hoping not to see him standing across the street again. For a while, it seemed like he was gone. But then lunchtime came. I decided not to go to my usual cafe. Instead, I walked 2 blocks further, ducking into a small diner I had never visited before. I told myself I just wanted to try something new, but the truth was I was trying to outrun the feeling that someone had marked me. I sat near the back, close to the kitchen, with a clear view of the door. The smell of greasy fries and burnt coffee filled the air. I had just started to relax when the bell above the entrance chimed. My body went stiff. It was him. He stepped inside, his coat brushing the doorway, his face still hidden beneath that wide-brimmed hat. He didn't order food. He didn't sit down, just stood there, scanning the room slowly, until his eyes, though I couldn't see them, seemed to land directly on me. My throat went dry. I grabbed my backpack and slipped into the kitchen before anyone could stop me. The cook shouted something, but I didn't hear it. I pushed through the back exit into the alley, heart hammering, breath ragged. I walked fast, almost running, taking turns at random, trying to lose him, though I didn't dare look behind me. When I finally stopped panting, I realized I had no idea where I was. A narrow street lined with old brick buildings, almost deserted. And that's when I saw him again. Not behind me, not in front of me, but reflected in the dusty window of a closed shop. He wasn't standing in the street itself, he was only in the glass. My own reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed. But beside me where no one should have been stood the man, clear as day, coat, hat, and those shadowed eyes. I spun around. The street was empty. Nothing but a trash can, a flickering streetlight, and silence. When I looked back at the window, the reflection was gone. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet, my mind racing. I didn't know what I had just witnessed, but one thing was certain, it wasn't normal. No one just peered in reflections like that. I didn't return to work that afternoon. Instead, I went home and locked the door again, pressing my back against it as if that could keep the world out. My hands shook as I drew the curtains closed, sealing myself in darkness. But darkness brought no comfort. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, twisting with every movement of the streetlights outside. Each one felt alive, as though it could reach out and swallow me whole. I sat on the couch, too scared to move until exhaustion dragged me into a restless sleep. And in that sleep, I dreamed, or maybe I didn't. I was standing in my living room, except it wasn't quite mine. The walls seemed taller, the air heavier, and from the corner, he emerged. The man in the black coat. He didn't speak, he didn't move closer. He just raised a hand, slowly, and pointed directly at me. When I jerked awake, gasping, I was still on the couch, drenched in cold sweat. But something wasn't right. The curtains I had closed earlier, they were open. And in the glass of the window, barely visible in the dim light, was the faint outline of a figure watching me. Whispers that weren't my own. I didn't scream. I wanted to, but my voice was trapped somewhere in my chest, strangled by fear. The figure in the window wasn't moving, was just there, a vague silhouette pressed against the glass, darker than the night itself. I squeezed my eyes shut, counted to 3, and opened them again. Gone. The window reflected nothing but the faint glow of the streetlight outside. My heart pounded as I stumbled back, nearly knocking over the coffee table. "This isn't happening," I whispered to myself, but even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Something was happening, something I couldn't explain. I barely slept the rest of the night. Every creak of the apartment, every groan of the pipes made me flinch. When morning finally came, I left the apartment in a daze, desperate for the ordinary chaos of the city to drown out my thoughts. At work, I tried to focus on anything: emails, reports, meaningless conversations, but concentration slipped through my fingers like sand. Around noon, I went into the bathroom just to splash cold water on my face. That's when it happened again. As I bent over the sink, the fluorescent light above flickered. I looked up at the mirror and froze. It was me, staring back, but not quite. My reflection didn't move when I did. Its lips twitched into a smile I wasn't wearing. And then, clear as day, it whispered, "I see you." The voice wasn't mine. It was low, distorted, like someone speaking through a broken speaker. My knees buckled, and I gripped the sink so hard my knuckles went white. "No," I muttered. "No, no, no." I blinked, and suddenly, the reflection was normal again. Just me, pale, terrified me. I stumbled out of the bathroom, ignoring the confused looks from my coworkers. I didn't care anymore. Something was wrong with me. Either I was losing my mind, or something beyond explanation had latched onto me. I didn't go back to my desk. Instead, I left the building, walking without direction, just trying to breathe. The city buzzed around me, horns blaring, people shouting, footsteps echoing off pavement, but I felt completely detached, as if I were drifting through a dream. That's when I heard it, a whisper, faint but unmistakable. It came from the crowd itself, though no one's lips were moving. Can't hide. I spun around, scanning faces. Everyone looked ordinary, laughing, arguing, glued to their phones. But the voice had been real. I was sure of it. I kept walking faster, pushing through the crowd, but the whispers followed me. They came from alleys, from passing cars, even from the breeze rustling through the trees, sometimes one voice, sometimes many. We see you. Don't run. He's waiting. By the time I reached my apartment, I was drenched in sweat, trembling from head to toe. I locked the door. Janet pressed my back against it, sliding to the floor. For hours, I sat there, knees pulled to my chest, trying to shut out the voices echoing in my head. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under, and I drifted into uneasy sleep. But sleep brought no peace. In the dream, I was in my apartment, though it didn't feel like mine. The walls bled shadows, the air thick and suffocating. From the corner of the room, the man in the black coat stepped forward. He moved slowly, deliberately, his footsteps echoing louder than they should. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked tight. When he reached me, he leaned close, and for the first time I saw his face, or rather, the lack of one. Darkness, endless and hollow, where features should have been. And then, in that same broken, distorted voice, he whispered, "You opened the door." I woke up gasping, drenched in cold sweat, clutching my chest like my heart might burst. The room was silent, the curtains closed. For a moment, I thought it was over, until I saw the bathroom door. It was open. Yes. And written across the mirror, in foggy, dripping letters that hadn't been there before, were 3 words. We are here. The secret I shouldn't have found. I stood frozen in the doorway of my bathroom, staring at the words smeared across the mirror. We are here. The letters dripped as though they'd been written in condensation. But the glass was cold and dry beneath my trembling fingers. My stomach churned. No one else had a key to this apartment.
No one else
could have been inside. Get it together, I muttered to myself, my voice cracking. This isn't real. You're imagining it. But I knew that wasn't true. I could feel that the words were a warning, or maybe a promise. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the building settling made my heart leap. I sat in the living room with every light on, staring at the bathroom door, as if the mirror itself might come alive. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I needed answers, something, anything, to explain what was happening. I started searching online. Hours slipped away as I dug through message boards, forgotten blogs, and old newspaper scans. Most of it was nonsense, ghost stories, conspiracy theories, paranoid ramblings. But then I found something that stopped me cold, an old forum post. The account was deleted, but the words remained. If you see the man in the black coat, do not look into mirrors. They belong to him. He watches through reflections. Once he notices you, it's too late. My hands shook as I scrolled further. Dozens of comments followed, people claiming similar experiences, being watched, hearing whispers, finding messages on mirrors. Most of them ended abruptly, as if the writers had vanished mid-conversation. I wanted to close my laptop, forget I had ever seen it. But one detail hooked me, a line buried in the middle of the post. There is one place they can't follow, the archive. Find it before he finds you. The archive. What did that mean? I tried searching for it, but the results were scattered mentions of an old building, a private library, whispers of a hidden society. It sounded insane, but the more I read, the more desperate I became, because deep down, I knew. If I didn't find it, I wasn't going to survive this. That evening, I left my apartment, stuffing only the essentials into my backpack. I didn't care where I ended up, as long as it wasn't inside those 4 walls with that cursed mirror. I walked for hours, following vague directions from half-buried online threads, until I found myself on the outskirts of the city in a forgotten district of crumbling warehouses and shuttered shops. The streets were eerily quiet, lit only by flickering lamps. And then I saw it, a building that didn't belong. While everything else was rusting and decayed, this structure stood tall, its stone facade unmarked by time. Above the door was a symbol I didn't recognize, carved into the archway a circle, split by jagged lines like cracks in glass. The archive? My pulse quickened as I pushed the heavy door open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, but strangely warm. Rows of shelves stretched into darkness, packed with books, journals, and boxes. It smelled of paper and secrets. I stepped cautiously inside, letting the door close behind me. For the first time in days, I felt safe. The whispers that had haunted me were gone. The shadows didn't twitch unnaturally. My reflection in the polished brass handles of the shelves looked normal again. "Hello!" I called, my voice echoing through the vast chamber. No answer. I wandered deeper, drawn to a table stacked with leather-bound journals. My hands shook as I opened one. The handwriting inside was jagged, frantic. He follows me through mirrors. He whispers my name at night. But here in the archive, he cannot see me. I flipped to another page. If you are reading this, you've seen him too. Do not leave. Do not go back. The archive is the only sanctuary. My chest tightened. Whoever wrote this had lived what I was living. But before I could turn the page, I heard it. A whisper. Faint, but inside the archive itself. You found it. The book slipped from my fingers. My blood ran cold. They weren't supposed to be able to follow me here. This was the safe place. The only safe place. And yet, in the corner of the room between two shelves, I saw it. A shadow, darker than all others, stretching unnaturally tall. The man in the black coat. When reality started to bend, I couldn't breathe. The archive was supposed to be safe. That's what the journals said, what the posts online swore by. But there he was, the man in the black coat standing between the shelves, like he'd been waiting for me all along. I staggered back, my hand knocking over a stack of dusty books. They hit the floor with a thunderous crash that echoed through the cavernous space, but the figure didn't flinch. He didn't move. He just watched. "Stay away from me," I shouted, though my voice shook, betraying my fear. No answer. Instead, the lights above flickered, and the air around me shifted. The archive seemed to warp the rows of shelves stretching impossibly long, bending like reflections in rippling water. My stomach lurched as I turned in a circle, realizing the exit door was gone. No matter which direction I looked, there were only shelves, stretching into infinity. Reality itself was bending around me. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to steady myself, but then the whispers began. Not from him at least, not only from him but from the books themselves. Pages rustled even though there was no breeze. Words crawled across the paper, shifting into sentences I could barely comprehend. "You shouldn't have come. You opened the door. You belong to him now." "No," I whispered, clutching my head. "This isn't real. This can't be real." But it was. I could feel it in my bones. No. I stumbled down one of the aisles, hoping, praying that if I kept moving, I'd find the way out. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, each one stretching into an endless reverberation that didn't match my pace. The shadows on the floor didn't belong to me either. They lagged behind, twitching unnaturally like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. And then from ahead, I saw him again. The man in the black coat waiting at the end of the aisle. Always at the end, no matter which path I took. I spun around, running the other way, and there he was again, closer this time. My lungs burned as panic consumed me. I sprinted blindly, tears stinging my eyes, until I burst into a wide circular chamber at the center of the archive. In the middle stood a massive mirror, its surface black as obsidian, swallowing the light around it. Every instinct screamed at me to stay away, but behind me I felt the air grow colder. It was coming. I edged closer to the mirror and my reflection appeared, except it wasn't me, not exactly. The reflection smiled. A wide, inhuman grin that stretched far beyond what my face could manage. Its eyes were black voids, swallowing everything. And then it spoke. "You let us in." Stumbled back, shaking my head violently. "No. I didn't, but I remembered the knocks. The night I had stayed silent, too terrified to move. 3 deliberate knocks at my door, and my failure to answer wasn't safety, it was permission. By ignoring them, by pretending nothing had happened, I had opened something I didn't understand. The mirror began to ripple like water, and from its surface, pale hands reached out. Dozens of them clawing, stretching, desperate to pull me inside. I screamed, falling backward as the hands brushed the floor near my feet. That's when I heard another voice, different, urgent, human. "Don't look at it." I whipped my head around. A figure stood at the edge of the chamber, half hidden in the shadows. Not him, not the man in the coat, but someone else. A woman, her clothes torn, her eyes wide with the same terror I felt. "Run!" she shouted, "before it takes you to!" I scrambled to my feet, but when I looked back at the mirror, the man in the coat was standing inside it now, his faceless void leaning closer. One hand pressing against the glass as though testing the barrier. The woman grabbed my arm, pulling me toward another passage I hadn't noticed before. My legs obeyed before my brain could catch up, and together we sprinted into the darkness of the archive, leaving the mirror and him behind. But even as we ran, I knew the truth. Reality itself was breaking, and I had no idea how much longer I could outrun him. Running, but nowhere to hide, the woman's grip on my arm was iron, dragging me through the twisting corridors of the archive. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't dare slow down. Behind us, the whispers grew louder, chasing us like a storm. "Who are you?" I managed to gasp between ragged breaths. "No time," she hissed. "Just keep running. If he catches us in here, it's over." The shelves blurred past, endless and shifting. It felt like the building was alive, rearranging itself to trap us. I glanced behind me once and instantly regretted it. The man in the black coat wasn't running. He didn't need to. He glided, impossibly smooth, as if the ground bent to carry him forward. No matter how far we ran, he stayed the same distance away. Like the shadows themselves were dragging him closer. We rounded a corner and burst into another chamber. This one was filled with broken mirrors, hundreds of them, shattered glass hanging on the walls like jagged teeth. My stomach lurched. Every shard reflected us, but wrong twisted versions of our faces grinning when we weren't, eyes black and hollow. "Don't look," the woman warned, yanking me through. "They'll pull you in." I tried to keep my eyes on the floor, but curiosity gnawed at me. I glanced at one shard and my blood froze. In it, I wasn't running. I was standing still, smiling, with the man in the coat's hand resting on my shoulder. I ripped my gaze away and stumbled forward, nearly falling. "What is this place?" I shouted. "It's where he hunts," she said, her voice tight with fear. "The archive isn't safe anymore. Not for us." We reached another hall, this one lined with doors. Dozens of them, all different shapes and sizes, oak, steel, glass, some ancient, some modern. She skidded to a stop in front of one and pressed her ear against it. "Not this one," she muttered. She moved to the next. "Not this one either." Frustration boiled in me. "What are you doing? Just pick one." She turned, eyes blazing. "You don't understand. Most of these aren't real exits. Open the wrong one, and we'll end up in his world." My stomach dropped. His world. Before she could answer, the whispers surged. The lights overhead flickered violently, plunging us into strobes of darkness. I felt him drawing closer. "He's here," she breathed. Finally, she grabbed one of the handles of a plain wooden door, unmarked and unassuming. "This one. It's unstable, but it'll hold for now. Move." We shoved it open, and a blinding white light swallowed us whole. When the world came back into focus, I staggered onto cold pavement. We were in an alleyway, trash bins lined up against graffiti-stained walls. The normal sounds of the city cars, voices, the hum of life hit me like a wave. I dropped to my knees, gasping. We made it. We made it out. The woman didn't answer right away. She was scanning the alley, her expression grim. "He won't stop," she said finally. "He never does." I looked up at her properly for the first time. Her face was pale, gaunt, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. She looked like me, or what I would become if this went on. "Who are you?" I asked again, softer this time. She hesitated, then whispered, "Someone he marked." "Like you." The words sank into me like ice water. "Marked," she nodded. "Once you see him, he never lets go." The archive might have slowed him once, but now it only feeds him. He wants you. He wants all of us. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Then what do we do?" Her eyes flicked toward the mouth of the alley. People walked by, oblivious, living their lives as though the nightmare didn't exist. "We run," she said flatly, "and we don't stop." And so we did. For days we moved constantly cheap motels, abandoned buildings, sleeping on buses just to stay ahead of him. But no matter where we went, he was there. Reflections in car windows, shadows stretching too far under streetlights, whispers in the hum of passing crowds. Every time I thought we'd gotten away, I'd feel that gaze pressing into me, reminding me I was never truly free. And sometimes, in those fleeting moments before sleep claimed me, I could swear I saw him standing at the foot of my bed, waiting. The truth I never wanted to know, I thought running would save me. I thought as long as I kept moving, as long as I never stayed in one place too long, he couldn't catch me. But I was wrong. It wasn't about distance. It was never about distance. The woman, her name was Mara. I'd finally learned I knew more than she let on. She never told me everything at once, only scraps between restless nights and frantic escapes. But one night, while we hid in the shell of an abandoned factory, I pressed her. "You know something?" I said, my voice trembling as much from exhaustion as fear. "You know what he is? What he wants? Tell me." She sat across from me on the cold concrete floor, knees drawn to her chest. In the dim light of a dying flashlight, her face looked hollow, carved by shadows. "You don't want to know," she whispered. "I have to," I insisted. "If I don't understand, I'm just running blind." Her eyes lifted, meeting mine, and for the first time I saw real pity there. "He isn't just watching you," she said slowly. "He's wearing you down, breaking you piece by piece, until you can't tell what's real anymore." I shivered. "Why?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Because he doesn't want to kill you. He wants you to surrender, to invite him in fully. Once you do, you're gone. Your body might still walk around, but it isn't you anymore." A chill sank into my bones. "So all the whispers, the reflections, it's just him trying to make me give up." Mara nodded. "And it works. I've seen it happen. People disappear right in front of me. One second they're fighting, and the next they're smiling like puppets on strings. Their eyes turn black. They speak in his voice. And then," she trailed off, shaking her head. I didn't press further. I didn't need to. I already knew. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing at the edge of my dreams, waiting patiently. He never rushed, never lunged. He didn't need to. He knew eventually I would break. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. There has to be a way to stop him, I said as we walked along the railway tracks, the sun just beginning to rise. Not just run, not just hide. Something permanent. Mara didn't answer at first. Then she said, almost reluctantly, "There might be, but it's not what you think." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "There's a reason he marks people. It isn't random. He chooses the ones who look, the ones who see him. Once you've noticed him, it means you already belong halfway to his world. That's why he can reach you through reflections." I frowned. "So you're saying it's my fault for noticing him?" she said firmly. "But it means you're connected to him now. And the only way to sever that connection is to understand what he is." Her words echoed in my head. What he is. That evening, we camped in the ruins of an old church. Its stained glass windows were shattered, its pews rotting, but something about the place felt different, less suffocating, less haunted. Mara lit a small fire, and for the first time in days I almost felt calm, till I heard the voice again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was clear, steady, and it came from directly behind me. "She's lying to you." I froze. Slowly I turned. In the broken remains of the church's cracked mirror, my reflection stared back at me. Only it wasn't mimicking me this time. It leaned forward, eyes black voids, lips curling into a grin. "You want the truth?" it hissed. "The truth is you already let me in, the night of the knocks. You didn't open the door, but you opened yourself. Fear is an invitation. You begged me to come closer. My stomach turned to ice. I staggered back, shaking my head violently. No, that's not true. You're lying. But deep down, I remembered how I had sat there that night, paralyzed, silently praying for the knocking to stop. Had that been enough? Had my fear itself been the key? I turned to Mara, desperate. Tell me it's not true. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She didn't speak. And in that silence I knew. I already belonged to him. My final choice, the words echoed in my head. I already belonged to him. I wanted to deny it, to scream that it wasn't true. But the more I thought about that night, the knocks, the silence, the way I had begged in my mind for it to end, the more I felt the truth sink its claws into me. Fear wasn't just weakness. Fear was a door, and I had opened it. Mara watched me carefully, her eyes full of the same pity I'd seen before. You can still fight, she said quietly, though her voice wavered. You're not gone yet. I shook my head. How do you fight something that isn't even real? She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. That's the only way. He isn't real, not the way we think. He's a parasite, feeding off the cracks in our minds. The more you believe in him, the stronger he becomes. Her words made sense, but they felt impossible. How could I not believe in him when I could see him, hear him, feel him breathing down my neck? Before I could answer, the church grew colder. The fire sputtered, shadows stretching unnaturally long across the broken walls. My stomach sank. I didn't need to turn to know he was here. Mara grabbed my wrist. Listen to me. This is it. He'll force you to choose him or yourself. If you let him in, you're finished. But if you face him, if you refuse him, maybe you can still be free. Her words barely reached me. No. Because in the cracked mirror of the church he stood tall, his faceless void leaning closer. And this time, he spoke directly, not through whispers. Not through distortions. His voice was in my head, smooth and steady. Let me in, he said. You're tired of running. It's tired of fear. With me it ends. No more pain, no more doubt, just peace. And for a moment, I wanted it. The thought of silence, of rest, of letting go of this endless chase. My body trembled with the temptation. But then I looked at Mara. The shadows carved deep into her face, the hollowness in her eyes. She had been running longer than me. She had been marked just like I had. But she was still here, still fighting. If she could resist, why couldn't I? I turned back to the mirror, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. No, I whispered. The man tilted his head, the void of his face somehow sharper, darker. You can't stop me. You are mine. I took a step closer to the mirror, heart hammering. You're nothing without me. You're just a shadow, a parasite. I made you real, and I can unmake you. The glass shuddered, rippling like water. Hands shot out, grasping for me. For once, I didn't back away. I pressed both palms against the cold surface, meeting the void head-on. I'm not yours, I said through clenched teeth. Not now, not ever. The whispers shrieked, dozens of voices howling in rage. The mirror cracked beneath my hands, a web of fractures spreading like lightning. No, the voice growled, deeper now, losing its steady calm. You belong to me, then take me, I spat, if you can. The mirror shattered. A violent blast of wind knocked me backward. Glass exploding into 1,000 shards that dissolved before they touched the ground. The shadows writhed, twisted, then shrank into nothing, and suddenly, silence. The fire steadied, the air warmed. For the first time in what felt like forever, the weight pressing on my chest lifted. Mara rushed to me, pulling me to my feet. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw something new in them. Hope. You did it, she whispered. You fought him off. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But deep inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. That shattering the mirror had only bought me time. Because when I closed my eyes, I still saw Jim in the corner of my dreams, waiting patiently, smiling with a mouth that wasn't there. Maybe Mara was right. Maybe I had freed myself. Or maybe I had just made my final choice to fight, even if it meant fighting him forever.